If you own Justin Herbert in a 2-quarterback or superflex league, you need to trade him before the season starts. Welcome to another episode here at Blue Duck Fantasy Football, or BDFF for short. Today, I will finally be doing the second episode in our Dynasty Buy and Sell series. I do apologize for the long wait, but I do hope to get all of these out before the season starts. Before we do get started, I do want to mention two things. Number one, just because I'm advising selling these players, it does not mean they are bad players. It's actually quite the contrary. These players are so good that their value is going to bring you solid return, which is why I'm talking about them. We won't be talking about selling terrible players today. There would be no point to that. Number two, this advice will apply a lot more to 2-quarterback or superflex leagues. As in 1-quarterback leagues, you usually have a couple of quarterbacks on your bench. You're not overly worried about your quarterback situation. You might be looking for a win-now quarterback in some seasons, but you're just not going to get as much value trading a quarterback in a 1-quarterback league that you would trading one in a 2-quarterback or superflex league. So although the advice still applies to 1-quarterback leagues, you're definitely going to be in a better position to get better return in a 2-quarterback superflex league. But having said that, let's jump right in. The man mentioned in the intro, the reason you're still listening, let's talk about Justin Herbert. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, how can I trade him? He's coming off an amazing rookie year, so why sell? Well, let me count the reasons. 5. I got 5 reasons ranging from good to great as to why you should trade Justin Herbert. Reason number 1 is the talent surrounding Justin Herbert. Keenan Allen, who doesn't exactly fit an ideal offense for Herbert, and finished with 17.6 PPR points per game in 2020, which is basically his average. You can see the tweet here where I tweeted about it. He's also 29, turning 30 in April. And as great of a player as he is, how long is he going to stay at that level for Justin Herbert's value to continue to rise? Mike Williams is likely not coming back after this season, so that's another weapon gone. Hunter Henry is already gone, leaving for the Patriots in the offseason. The only player that they're going to have around that is going to be a factor is going to be Austin Eckler, who fits really well with what Justin Herbert does with the little dump-offs. They had a lot of passes to the running backs last season. We will get into that. He has 2 years left on his deal, and if he can prove to stay healthy, he's going to be a weapon. But after that, there's really nothing else. Like, there's no elite prospect that we're waiting on, that they've drafted or spent a lot of draft capital on. You're hoping on a lot of guys, but that's what you're doing, you're hoping. So that's reason 1. Reason 2, and one of the biggest reasons why you should be trading Justin Herbert, is the 2020 scheme and the coaching staff that developed that scheme no longer being with the team. So coming out of college, there was a lot of worry about Justin Herbert's decision-making ability. The coaching staff in 2020 did a great job of limiting his decision-making. Justin Herbert threw for a league-low 62% of his passes that were less than 20 yards and not targeted to the running backs. The average for most NFL quarterbacks is about 70% of passes are thrown either less than 20 yards or not to the running backs. So you can see that the offense was designed to have a lot of dropbacks, to throw deep passes, and a lot of quick passes. So the decision-making in those isn't something that is going to come into play. You know what the play is. It's a deep drop, or you know it's a quick dump. And I know what you're saying, but Ben, he was the most pressured quarterback in the league. I mean, if you run a screenplay where the O-line leaves to go block for your receiver or a running back, and then you throw a quick to him, yeah, you're going to be pressured. That's a design pressured play. You have a 7-step drop where you're going to bomb it and you need the play to develop to make sure you can make that throw. Yeah, you're probably going to get pressured. He was pressured by design. And now that the coaching staff, last year's head coach and last year's offensive coordinator are gone to a different team, there's no guarantee that the scheme is going to be the same as it was. Actually, you could probably guarantee that the scheme is going to be different, because that's what people in the NFL do. They get a job, they have to change something, because if they keep doing what the last person did, they're going to be questioned if it doesn't work, and they won't get any credit if it does work. You've seen it so many times. A new GM will come in. We didn't draft that guy. He's not our guy. Let's get rid of him. Let's start over fresh. The Browns did it for how many years? So you know a coach coming in here is going to want to put his stamp on this team and is going to change up the offense. By the way, 156 total passes thrown to the running back in 2020 for the Chargers. That offensive coordinator now in Philly, so you might want to get yourself some Kenneth Gainwell shares. Number 3. And for number 3, I'm going to have to tell you a story because I know you're still not convinced. You're thinking he's young. He's only going to go up, up, up. I don't care if he doesn't have the greatest weapons around him. He's so good, it's not going to matter. Coaching staff doesn't matter. Well, I'm going to tell you a story about a quarterback who was drafted early in the first round, just like Justin Herbert. He didn't start right away, just like Justin Herbert. But when he did get in because of an injury, just like Justin Herbert, he was electric. He had the league talking. He went on to start the rest of the season. He took over from the veteran, just like Justin Herbert, and was a nominee for Offensive Rookie of the Year, just like Justin Herbert. Now, where Justin won Rookie of the Year, this quarterback lost out to a skill position player, as Justin Herbert should have, to Justin Jefferson. In the offseason, the coaching staff was changed. New head coach, new OC, just like Justin Herbert is getting. But still, no one in the dynasty community seemed to care. This quarterback's team even added one of the best wide receivers in the game to the roster. So the hype was insane. He was ranked as high as 4th. Similar to Justin Herbert, who I've seen ranked as high as 4th, but usually falls at about 6th. He was definitely a top 5 quarterback, ahead of the likes of Aaron Rodgers, but behind guys like Mahomes and Watson. Oh yes, this story didn't take place that long ago. I even remember thinking, why oh why did I draft Lamar Jackson instead of this quarterback? Not kidding. I actually thought that. Have you figured out who I'm trying to talk about now? I'll give you a hint. He also played Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. That's right. I'm talking about the one and only Baker Mayfield, who after his rookie season was seen as a top 5 quarterback in dynasty leagues. Yet we fast forward to 2 years later today, and he's barely a top 20 quarterback. That's how big of a fall is possible with Justin Herbert. And I know what you're saying. Oh, Ben, Herbert's different. Baker's just a one-read quarterback who runs to the right when he gets into trouble. Everybody's figured him out. I don't disagree. Baker sucks. I say it all the time. But Justin Herbert got figured out twice last year. Once by Bill Belichick. Don't hold that against him. Bill Belichick just owns rookie quarterbacks. But Brian Flores and the Dolphins also held him in check with an all-out blitz package. That's 2 different ways people attacked him and got terrible performance out of him. Now, he saved his fantasy day in that one. He had 2 throwing touchdowns and a rushing one, but he threw for less than 200 yards and didn't have that many rushing yards on top of it. So we have the surrounding cast not being that great, or at least not looking that great for the future. We have the coaching staff gone, likely some new plays, a different scheme, and we have the story of Baker Mayfield, and we have the fact that he was figured out a couple times last season. Now, finally, what I'm going to say is not about him or anyone. It's just about playing Dynasty Fantasy Football and the risk-reward of it all. He's drafted as a top 6 pick in startup Dynasty drafts. I mean, maybe he slides late into the first, but in the Dynasty draft that I did, he was a top 6 pick. And in the mock Dynasty draft that Matt and I did, he was a top 6 pick. In an auction format, granted, there were a couple of Chargers fans. There are 2 of the 20 that exist were in that league. He was the second highest bid player after Patrick Mahomes. So the hype is real. People believe he's the real deal, and people are willing to pay a lot for him. Now, if he's pick 6 or pick 1 in a startup league for Dynasty 2 quarterback Superflex, how much more valuable can he get? Versus, what if he falls? What if the scheme isn't right this year? What if he has the Baker fall? Would people still believe after year 2, but he's now top 10 being picked in the 3rd round? How much value have you lost by not trading for him? And I mean, what's his ceiling? He becomes the number 1 overall pick in Dynasty? How much more is that worth than where he is now? What's his value compared to the top quarterback? Finally, I'll say this one thing about him. If you were to tell yourself at last year's rookie draft, that if you were to draft Justin Herbert with a early, mid, late first or early second. I've seen him fall that far in 10-team leagues. And you'd be able to trade him for the 1.01, a.k.a. Trevor Lawrence, and then some. You would have done it a year ago. So now after 1 year, just like Baker had that 1 year in the NFL where he proved it, you're sold. Really? If you own Justin Herbert in a 2-quarterback or Superflex league, you need to trade him before the season starts. Or shortly after the season starts, and hope he doesn't have any serious setbacks where the offense just doesn't look right. His value could tank very quickly. Yes, his value could go up, but it's already so high that selling out on a player with 1 year experience, just like if you had done with Baker Mayfield, you'd be set. And again, don't trade him for nothing. Get a lot for him. There's a reason he's number 1 on the list. Get yourself another great quarterback and another solid prospect or two. Fill needs on your roster while avoiding the possible Baker Mayfield downfall. That could happen. Whether you believe it will or not doesn't really matter. It's about getting value out of an asset that's pretty much peaked. They can go a bit higher, but they can go a whole lot lower. Up next on this list, we are going to talk about Jalen Hurts. So first thing first, I love Jalen Hurts for 2021. But that's only in redraft seasonal leagues. And I'm happy to buy him where his ADP is. I will probably end up having him as my quarterback in a few leagues that are just seasonal. So why don't I like him in Dynasty if he's going to have a great season? Won't he be worth more next season? No. And the reason for that is if he doesn't win a lot of games and prove that he could be a starting quarterback in the NFL, the writing will be on the wall by mid-season, late season. And although he's still going to be getting fantasy points for this year, he won't have a job in next year, and everyone will know it. His value in a Dynasty League will be next to nothing. Like, he'll be a stash. You might get a third-round pick for him. So even if he puts up QB1 overall numbers in 2021, if he doesn't have a starting job in 2022, he's not worth anything. Just look at Jameis Winston. He went from being the second best quarterback in fantasy to not having a job because he couldn't take care of the football and he couldn't win enough games. They got Tom Brady and they won the Super Bowl. The Eagles aren't playing fantasy football. They're just playing football. So if they can't win with Jalen Hurts, he's going to be gone, and it's going to be very obvious that he's going to be gone well before the season ends. So his fantasy value now is a lot higher than it will be at the end of the year, even if he has a great fantasy season. Sure, the cards could line up right. He could end up starting for a different team, but you want to take that gamble? Have you seen him playing? Do you think that he can win at this level? I mean, if you're a believer, you're a believer. But best thing you can do is find somebody who is a believer in your league and trade Jalen Hurts to them to get max value for him. So let's go over a couple reasons why I don't think he'll be successful at the NFL level. He was 1-3 last year. That team was pretty bad. The team hasn't gotten that much better. His completion percentage was awful, and it's unlikely to get much better. This isn't a Josh Allen situation here. Jalen Hurts has always been more of a college quarterback than Josh Allen, who had a big arm, was a prototypical NFL quarterback, but also had his legs. He just wasn't very accurate. Jalen Hurts is a dual threat quarterback where his legs are, in a lot of cases, his primary weapon. It's not that he can't throw the ball, but he doesn't throw the ball like Josh Allen does. So related to number one is, can he win? Maybe. I'm not saying he can't. But with him being ranked in the top 12 and people thinking he could be Lamar, this is about where Lamar was ranked after his rookie season, by the way, in dynasty rankings. There's a difference, though. Lamar is incredibly electric, whereas Jalen Hurts is athletic. He's not the fastest guy. He's tough to bring down, but he's not going to do what Lamar does or things like Michael Vick used to do. Another thing is, I'm not a big mobile quarterback guy in dynasty leagues. Their shelf life compared to other quarterbacks isn't anywhere near as long. And again, I'm talking 2 quarterbacks league mostly here. In a 1 quarterback league, I'm fine with a mobile quarterback. Like Jalen Hurts, in a 1 quarterback league, I probably wouldn't be looking to trade him if I'm a win now team. I'll gamble on him being the guy this year. But if I have another quarterback, say an Aaron Rodgers or somebody else, and I don't need him, I'll definitely be looking to sell him. And further my point about not being a mobile quarterback guy, in a salary 4-year rookie contract league, I tried to trade Lamar Jackson after the first season. Now, it was a one quarterback league, so again, more difficult to trade, and especially when it comes to contracts. You're looking at taking on a big contract, giving up a cheap one because he was a second-round pick. But any type of long-term league, I'm looking to move away from mobile quarterbacks and just have my quarterbacks in place and not have to worry about them. Final thing I'll say, this is a different coaching staff than the coaching staff that he had last year. Different from Herbert because he didn't play the whole season, but this is the coaching staff that would have had some say in getting him on the team. I mean, he was a second-round pick when they had Carson Wentz, who was a number 2 overall pick, still on the roster. They could go from losing Wentz one season to just giving up on Hurts after the next season. And the new coaching staff, as we talked about in the Herbert part, will probably want to institute their own system, and they might want to just go after their own guy, which makes it even more likely that he's not there next season. Speaking of mobile quarterbacks and me not liking them, let's talk about Kyler Murray. So last year, you could have traded Lamar Jackson for Kyler Murray and more. And now this season, you could probably trade Kyler Murray for Lamar Jackson and a little bit more. Not as much as you would have gotten last year doing the other trade, but this is how volatile their values are. So right now with Kyler Murray, you're looking at him being the number 2, number 3 quarterback in fantasy. I mean, he can go as low as 4, I guess, but his value is at its likely peak. And there was a big change in his fantasy points from 2019 to 2020, and it wasn't just all about DeAndre Hopkins. So let's get into that, break down these stats as to why he had a season that he's likely not going to replicate. So first off, his points jumped 6 per game. 6 per game from his rookie year. That is an insane amount. So we have to ask, is this sustainable or are we in for regression? Spoiler, we're in for regression. 2019 to 2020, the passing attempts went from 542 to 558. Not a big change there, so that's negligible. The passing yards went from 3,722, that's 3,722, to 3,971, a bump of about 250 yards. Thank you, DeAndre Hopkins, for coming. Passing touchdowns, 20 to 26. Again, thank you, D-Hop. Lack of goal line running game as well helped that out. I believe Chase Edmonds has a career 1 touch inside the 5. And he is their lead running back this year. There's a reason why they got Connor, to have a bigger back, possibly have more carries at the goal line that they didn't have last season. Rushing attempts went from 93 to 133, so almost a 50% increase there. And it is a significant jump, but an extra 2.5 rushes per game isn't really unreasonable if he's gotten more comfortable with the NFL game. Now he knows when to scramble, when not to scramble. Before, he might have been trying to prove too much, as being like, I'm a pass-first quarterback, because so many people thought that his footwork and his legs were going to be a big part of him. And he might have been playing with a chip on his shoulder, trying to prove I could pass. So now he's doing both, and he's gotten better there. So I'm not taking that against him. I don't think we're going to see regression there. I think we're still going to see the similar volume. Number 2 here for the rushing part is the rushing yards going from 544 to 819. So that's an average of 5.85 yards per rush to 6.15. And it doesn't seem to me to be that big of a stretch. Again, you have DeAndre Hopkins on the field. People have to pay attention to him. And if Rondale Moore could turn into something, or some other wide receiver or tight end, I don't think they use tight ends, but can turn into something else on the field, it will allow him to even rush for more yards. Or if they can have a strong running game, the more players the defenses have to look out for, the more chances that Kyler Murray will have to run. So now we're going to get to the rushing touchdowns. And the rushing touchdowns went from 4 to 11. And again, less than 50% more attempts, and we are almost tripling the rushing touchdowns. I talked about no rushing game near the goal line. This now going to be broken down and compared to Lamar Jackson in his MVP season and in last season. Kyler Murray went from scoring a touchdown on 4.3% of his runs to 8.3% of his runs going for touchdowns. For comparison, Lamar Jackson in 2019, when he won the MVP, had 3.9% touchdowns per run, and in 2020 actually went up to 4.4. So that's a pretty nice number to think of when you're thinking about a mobile quarterback of this level, how often they're going to rush and how often they're going to find the end zone. It should be less than 5%, somewhere in the 4 to 5% range. 8.3% just isn't going to happen. This would happen with somebody like, I don't know, a Tim Tebow who was used like that, or a Cam Newton nowadays, who, although he does run, is looking to pass, and when they get to the end zone, he's looking to bully his way in there. That's not what Kyler Murray is. Kyler Murray is quick-footed, and as soon as he sees a hole, he's going to go. He's going to have over 100 attempts every year. He shouldn't be scoring a touchdown on almost 10% of them. So now we're going to take his stats from last year, give him a more normalized touchdown percentage on his runs, and see where he falls to in the rankings. So by doing that, his touchdown number is going to go from 11 to 6, and then he finishes at quarterback 10 instead of quarterback 4 on average. Yes, I get that he was number 2 overall, but only 4th on points per game, which is the better statistic to look at. He was behind Dak Prescott. Another point to talk about is the surrounding cast. They lost Fitz, I think. I mean, most people think he's not coming back. They added A.J. Green. I love A.J. Green, but I'm sorry, I just don't think he's got that much gas left. D-Hop is 29, and none of Isabella, Kirk, or any others have shown to be elite wide receivers. I mentioned Rondell Moore, who they drafted, but with their track record of drafting wide receivers basically since Fitzgerald, there isn't much reason to get excited. This team's long-term future is questionable, and adding guys like J.J. Watt just screams, this is a win-now team. Figure out the long-term later. I mentioned when talking about Jalen Hurts about the fact that I'm not the biggest supporter of mobile quarterbacks when it comes to Dynasty. Love them in seasonal leagues. I don't want that injury risk, and I don't want that volatility. So again, just reiterating that I'm not the biggest fan of mobile quarterbacks in Dynasty leagues. You have the injury risk with all the rushing attempts, and then you also have the volatility from one season to the next when they're doing 8.3% touchdowns on their runs. So what you're going to want to do with Kyler Murray is sell him to get yourself a quarterback who is not going to be as sexy of a name, but will also be able to fill a different position because you'll be getting a 2-for-1 while trading Kyler Murray away. Especially if you're not a win-now team. I mean, if you're a win-now team, it's going to be tough for you to trade Kyler Murray away, but he was basically the first overall pick 3 years ago. So unless your team's improved that much in those few years, congratulations. But otherwise, you're likely still in the midst of a rebuild, and trading him away would be the right move to do. Last one, and it's going to sound like I'm on repeat, but this is another quarterback to sell if you're not on a win-now team, and the reasons are obvious. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers. He's old. He's almost 40. He upped his value tremendously last season, but a lot of that was the result of him throwing touchdowns on 9.1% of his throws. His career average is 6.3, in case you were wondering. So we're going to go quickly through this just to get it over with. Everybody knows Aaron Rodgers overperformed last season, winning the MVP. Nobody knows where he's going to be next season. That's something we'll talk about. But if we're just going to put his career averages on his volume for last season, just going from the 9.1 to 6.3 drops his finish as quarterback 12 on average. He finished in the top 5 on average last season and was top 3 overall because he didn't miss any games. And I feel like that's enough to let you know that he went from 5 to 12 because of his insane passing touchdown. And I mean, a lot of those were just like snap the ball, touch pass to somebody running across, and that counts as a passing touchdown. I saw Devontae do it a couple times. A lot of them were just kind of 1-yard passes that count as a forward throw and count as a touchdown for him, even though it's not much different than a handoff. Next up is accuracy. 70% accuracy on his throws. Do you think he's Drew Brees or something? His career average is 65%. And if you think that's not a big gap from 65 to 70, it's a huge gap. So minus 2 more points per game if he goes back to his career average for what his passing completion percentage is. And now he's worse than Big Ben on average points per game as a fantasy quarterback in 2020. So you want more? Of course you do. He will not be in Green Bay in 2022, most likely. So just add some uncertainty for him. Could he land in a great spot like the Denver Broncos with Sutton and Judy and Fant and Javonte Williams? Absolutely. Could he put up Peyton Manning-like numbers when he goes over there? Absolutely. Is there any guarantee he goes there? Absolutely not. He could retire. He could go be the host for Jeopardy. He says he wants to do it. The seat is open now. It is a possibility. Is it as likely as him joining the Denver Broncos? No, but it is a possibility. And just imagine you trade for Aaron Rodgers, or you hold on to Aaron Rodgers right now, and you were thinking, well, he's going to the Broncos for sure next season, and he goes to jeopardy. And now you have a dead asset that you could have gotten something for. So let's take one last thing into consideration here, and that's his 2020 stats. If you compare that to his average, and he's more likely to put something close to his average up this season than what he did last year. So he'll be a year older. Stats won't look as good. So he'll be a lot cheaper next season prior to any type of movement. So you could look to sell now, buy at the end of the season before he's going anywhere else for less, and then that way you're at least hedging your bet. So if he does retire, you got something for him and then paid less to get him back. But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Make sure to hit that like button if you made it this far. Hit the subscribe. And if you want to share this with people, by all means. But drop a comment. Let us know if you have any of these players. And if you want to trade them, what you should be looking for. Post your rosters in the comments so we can look over your team and determine where your needs are and what you should be targeting. And that's it.